Welcome back. As the government continue to withdraw troops from overseas and the numbers serving in our armed forces are cut, this evening a Tonight programme asks whether the many part-time territorial army soldiers can fill the gap left by full-time regulars.
Well, it's a question that Jake Wood can answer. After serving multiple tours of the Middle East with the territorial army, he's been left with post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, you might find some of the footage you're about to see or the content of this interview disturbing.
Jake's platoon came under heavy bombardment, and in 2 days, Jake saw 3 of his unit killed by enemy fire. His own footage shows some of the horror of those moments.
We lost a guy out on patrol the previous day. I mean, again, a very nice guy. The next morning, the Taliban attacked our patrol base again, but this time with everything they had. There was an Afghan soldier that died, and I was trying to help him.
And Jake joins us now. Lovely to meet you. Thank you for coming here today. Just a bit of background about your life, really. You were brought up in a military family and you joined the Territorial Army when you were at university. But it wasn't, to begin with, that wasn't the life that you went into. You said you had a career, you were a job as a business analyst, and that was up until the age of 30. What was it that made you then want to go into it full-time and go and serve?
What it was basically was the Iraq War. The invasion of Iraq. Up until that point, I'd been like a normal TA soldier. So I did the weekends and the Tuesday and Wednesday nights, and 1 2-week exercises per year. But then, with the invasion of Iraq, all of a sudden I was called up, to serve what would be my first tour of duty out there, and that's when everything kind of changed in my life.
Well, it was quite rushed, wasn't it? Because you're sitting in the bank, and then pretty quickly you find yourself on the way and there. Yeah.
I mean, that tour is very unusual. Usually you have a lot more notice before you go on tour, but I got the letter on the Friday, I think, and then I was turning up as an army barracks, like to mobilise, to go to Iraq. I think it was about 3 days later.
But that first tour, I mean, you thrived with the camaraderie, and it was something that actually you'd been training to do for a long time. And actually being there was something that you enjoyed.
It was, I'm afraid to say, and this is, perhaps an unpalatable truth about like soldiers, but I'm afraid it is a truth. Is that
well, it's a career. I can understand that. It's a career, and thank God you're all there, because if you weren't, then we don't know. It would be perfect to have a world without the need for soldiers and war, but nevertheless it is inevitable. It does happen, so thank goodness you do what you do.
Don't apologise for that.
OK, thank you. Well, most soldiers want, to go to tour. They want to do the job for real, so I have to admit that when Iraq kicked off, I did want to go. In hindsight, I could have been naive, but I did want to soldier for real.
Well, you didn't see much combat in that initial period, and you came back home, and other than the few, I suppose, inevitable ghoulish questions of people wanting to know what you got up to and what you'd seen and what you'd done, the worst part about it was really looking at everyone's life and thinking, after what I've been and what I've done and the part that I played, this is actually very ordinary.
Yeah, and that was a bit of a challenge, and in the end that was why I volunteered to go back to Iraq, because I'd had this taste of this kind of otherworldly existence, and which seems steeped in, and this might sound strange, but morality and meaning. As a soldier, you have to look after the man next to you, and he looks after you, and it's a very unselfish existence in that respect. And it might surprise you that I didn't see that altruism so much in investment banking when I came back. So I lasted about 6 months, back at the bank, and then I was just, I'm out of here, but I'm going back, because it was like returning to a world that made more sense to me.
Yeah, so it was a combination of that, and also you were having girl troubles at the time, so just to get back there was your escape, really. When you were there, the Army always say that it is good to communicate your feelings, how you're feeling, to speak to somebody, Easier said than done, though, I imagine. And you said that that's actually something that you weren't able to do, to communicate how you were feeling.
It's quite hard to do because it can be very hard for a soldier to, to communicate to like someone who hasn't been there, who hasn't seen and done what he's seen and done, or she's seen and done. It can be very hard to, discuss that with someone who hasn't been there. And there's nothing against, the person who hasn't been there, but I know soldiers do find it very difficult sometimes to talk about their experiences on tour with, with their loved ones back home, and this can be very distressing for their loved ones.
I suppose that if you were a full-time soldier, that when you come back from tour of duty, you would have time with your mates, the people that you'd been with, the people who had been through it with you.
Yeah.
But with the TA, there isn't this sort of cooling off period. You come back and then everyone goes back to where they were before.
It's a complete fish out of water experience, and you've got this bizarre sort of juxtaposition of experiences, this black and white contrast where, 1 week you're in Iraq or Afghanistan, and literally the very next week you're suddenly back in Civvy Street. You'll have a few weeks leave, and then you'll find yourself sitting back at that desk, in my case, in Canary Wharf, surrounded by people who, through no fault of their own, have no idea what you've been doing or seeing. And for TA soldiers, this can be an extremely isolating experience, and this is one of the reasons why PTSD is markedly higher in TA soldiers as opposed to regular soldiers.
Well, you went back to Afghanistan, or went to Afghanistan in 2007, and you say that's the tour that changed you.
Yes.
You saw things there that no one, soldier or not, no one should ever have to see.
Yeah.
You watched injuries of people who you were with, hideous injuries of people that you were with that were by the side of you. A much-loved officer, you watched him die as well. So these are dreadful in a terrible way. Did you feel at that point that something was slipping away from you?
In retrospect, yes, but at the time, I wasn't really. It reached the point about 4/5 of the way through the tour, and it reached a point where I was dimly aware that I kind of stopped feeling.
This is the 1,000 yard stare.
This is the 1,000 yard stare, which is a phrase coined to describe the look a soldier can have when he reaches this point where the mind essentially, and I know this now, has reached a point where it's there's too much emotion, and it's this automatic self-defense mechanism which we all have inbuilt into us, where the mind just goes, okay, that's too much, and it just goes into emotional shutdown. And retrospect, I can remember the point, when I reached that point. But
what was that point?
It was the 11th of August 2007, and I remember it very well. But purely because the tour had been building up militarily up to that point, in terms of action. But that was. We lost a guy the previous day, and then August 11th was when, our patrol base got attacked, particularly viciously, and I was trying to drag the Afghan soldier to safety, the dying black soldier to safety, and that's when we lost our company commander as well.
No, you don't have to talk about this if you don't know.
It's okay, because I want people, I would like the public, to know what the reality is, because I feel it's important, because all these things are being done in their name, and I feel it's vital that the public knows not just what's going on abroad in their name, but also what the repercussions can be when these soldiers come back home. And I mean, potentially lifelong repercussions, in the case of PTSD or physical injury.
How has it altered you as a man?
This is the longest period I've been single. I mean, just as a man, I don't want that to be, the case, for much longer. But
what about? I mean, I know that you don't like people walking behind you.
Okay, no,
you
sorry.
You don't like. I mean, you don't like loud noises. So if there's a knock at the door, you'll take them straight back.
Yeah, I mean, these are like, the classic symptoms of PTSD. I know now. There's one called hypervigilance, which is where I find it very uncomfortable if someone's walking behind me in the street because I can't see what they're doing. And this is a bit of a problem if you live in London.
Yeah, of course.
But there are quite a lot of people walking on the pavement. But it all goes back to, the state of mind which you had in Afghanistan, where you had to be constantly on alert, for dangers, hypervigilance, and you had to sear that behaviour into your brain because that was all that was but potentially keeping you and your friends alive. Yeah. So it becomes seared in there. And the danger is that you bring this back home with you because it has been seared in there. And loud bangs, for me in my brain now, if I hear a loud bang, that's hardwired to lethality. So I have no control of this. If there's a loud bang, I will duck.
Are you getting any sort of help with it? Does it is there anything that eases it or makes it better? Do you feel it's getting better with time or not?
I'm just maintaining it. To be to be honest, Ollie, it's I accept that this will be with me now for the rest of my life. This past will always be in my present, and but I've had to accept that. I've had a lot of very good treatment from the army, but unfortunately it has not cured me.
Yeah.
But I think once you accept, what's wrong with you, you can move on with your life. You can try and make something of it. And in my case, I've learned that I just have to make room for the ghosts.
Yeah.
Well, you say that that you were diagnosed. You have survivor guilt.
Yes.
You've got guilt at killing. That is another thing, and that's a story we don't need to go into now. But that's another area, an aspect that put another layer onto it for you.
That's right.
You say, as we look out of this window now, around the country, anywhere where we are, that there are mentally and morally wounded soldiers all around us.
That's why the book's called Among You. That's why I could only call it Among You, and because, we walk among you now, and we are everywhere you look, but you won't see us.
I mean, soldiers are so incredibly brave, but I just have to say, for you coming here and talking about this is like the most brave of the brave, and highlighting it and drawing attention to it and speaking about it. And thank you so much.
No, thank you.
It's incredibly moving, and we hear about it, but to see and hear you speak today is incredibly touching. So thank you.
But I think also, and we're lucky we get the chance, and I know we go out on BFBS on this show as well to say, and we say it as often as we possibly can. You apologised when you first came here, and I think that's absolutely the wrong thing to do, because for all of us, we're hugely proud of you and everyone who does that job, and thank you for doing it, and thank you for being there for us. And this is the book. It's Jake Wood, It's Among You, the extraordinary true story of a soldier broken by war. And that Tonight programme, which we showed a clip of earlier on, is New Model Army. It's on ITV at 7:30 this evening. And I think we all deserve to sit. We should sit down. It's something we should do is sit down and watch it tonight and know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, if you or anyone you know has been affected by post-traumatic stress disorder, we've put details of organisations on the website that can help you.
Some more of your comments now with Stephen.
Some incredibly moving comments here, and they are literally flooding in, so thank you very much. Alicia Mary says, my brother has been broken by war. He fought in Afghanistan last year and has post-traumatic stress disorder, but is getting a lot better. Well, on behalf of This Morning, we're very pleased to hear that. Linda has emailed, I lost my son in January. He also served in Iraq. He was also in Bosnia, Kosovo and Northern Ireland. After Iraq, my son turned to alcohol. He also suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, having nightmares and flashbacks. It's a terrible thing and affects families and loved ones too. Robert died in January this year. He was 35. Jake, I salute you, sir, and I hope you become stronger every day. Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you. Keep them coming in. Competition time now.